or import service. That's one worry. And number two, more domestic turmoil. The PNP has not been in power since 2006, that's almost 17 years. They boycotted the 2014 election, lost the 2018 one in a landslide, and are now boycotting again. It's a risky strategy. You see, the BNP always had an Islamist chief. They had close ties with the hardline Jamaat. And now those ties are deepening. The Jamaatis are openly joining the BNP protests, destroying public property, burning vehicles and buses, which makes you wonder, is the BNP going even more hardline? And if so, it's a worry for Sheikh Hasina. The Prime Minister realizes this. She took part in a discussion this weekend to celebrate Victory Day, marks Pakistan's surrender in the 1971 war. And in that discussion, she had a message for the opposition. Listen to what she said, I'm quoting. It is not possible to win the hearts of people through arson, terrorism, and killing. They should know this, and they should act accordingly. Sheikh Hasina faces two kinds of pressure, both internal and external. She's tried to limit the damage by offering some concessions, but it will be too little too late, because the opposition has already chosen the path of repression and violence.
De wereld en het leven, vol van mooie chaos. Zonder downs, geen up. Ik ben hier om te leven. Speel online op 711.nl. 711, meer dan een nummer.
Now let's turn to another one of India's neighbors, Myanmar. It is in the grip of a civil war-like situation. Rebel groups in the country have joined hands for a multi-pronged attack to take on the military junta. The junta took power in 2021 and ousted the democratically elected government in a coup. But in late October, the rebels began their offensive, and they've been making gains since. The junta is on the back foot, losing town after town. The latest loss was the city of Namsan, the Shan state. It fell on Friday, the day after China announced a ceasefire. Our next report brings you the latest.
Myanmar is in turmoil. Multiple armed ethnic groups in the nation have taken up arms against the junta. Three groups began the offensive on the 27th of October. They call themselves the Three Brotherhood Alliance. They began their offensive in Myanmar's northeastern state of Shan, and the resistance has spread like wildfire. Other rebel groups from around the country have joined the fight. All of them are united in their desire to overthrow Myanmar's military junta.
We have launched attacks against the military to protect the lives of civilians. The main objective is to take down the military dictatorship, which is what Myanmar people call this.
That was a spokesperson for one of the three rebel groups that began this round of fighting. The announcement came after they took over the town of Namsan. It's a provincial capital in the Shan state. One of the many major towns the rebels have captured in the last month and a half. The junta has been losing one base after another. Their troops have been fleeing or surrendering before the advancing rebel forces. The rebels say that even Myanmar's soldiers don't want to fight for the junta.
When we captured military positions, we found that military soldiers had many weapons and ammunition left, but they had abandoned their positions. Military soldiers could fight with these weapons if they wanted, but they decided to run away. It shows that military soldiers don't want to fight under the military dictatorship anymore.
This may just be a way to demoralize the junta's troops, but if it's true, then the question arises, who wants to keep Myanmar's military junta in power? The answer is obvious.
China is happy to see the parties to the conflict in the northern Myanmar hold peace talks and achieve positive results. We are ready to continue to provide support and facilitation to this effort.
China has been supporting the junta for years. It also has good ties with some of the ethnic armed groups in Myanmar. Beijing has been advancing its interests by playing all sides in this conflict. So it likely doesn't want the status quo to change, which is why China has been acting as a mediator, pushing for a ceasefire in Myanmar. It even announced a truce last Thursday, but it looks like Beijing spoke too soon, because the very next day the rebels took over Namsan. There are reports of fighting in other regions as well, like the Rakhine state in the west. Rebels say they've also taken over a junta base in the regional capital, Sittwe. They're also accusing the junta of resorting to indiscriminate bombardment. They say that the military is dropping bombs in civilian areas out of desperation. The fighting in Myanmar has displaced over 300,000 thousands in the country and entered neighboring nations like India. The Indian border states of Mizoram and Manipur have seen a large influx lately. Reports say over 6,000 refugees have now crossed the border. The chief minister of the state has expressed concern. He says India cannot take the developments in Myanmar lightly. He says that refugees must be allowed in on humanitarian grounds, but provisions need to be made so that they can return once the fighting is over. However, for that, the fighting needs to stop. There are no signs of that happening anytime soon.
Hello, this is Pegasus Lifestyle Management. How can...
Civil war, a political civil war, was broken out in South Africa. It features former President Jacob Zuma. He was at a political event on Saturday. That's when he fired the first salvo.
Thank you, sir. Your specialist vehicle is now ready for you at our nearest pickup station. Call again. Goodbye.
Successor and quote. Jacob Zuma said, and I quote, "It would be a betrayal to campaign for Ramaphosa's party." That's ANC, or the African National Congress, also the party of Nelson Mandela. ANC first came to power in 1994 after South Africa won freedom from the apartheid rule. And the same party has won every election since. Every election since 1994, the ANC has come out on top. Jacob Zuma was also an ANC leader. He belongs to the same party. So is Ramaphosa. But now Zuma is rebelling. He says he will vote for a different party.
2024, I will vote for the Mkhonto Wesizwe MK party. I call on all South Africans to join me in taking the important step and to vote for the MK party.
Zuma is 81 years old, a politician who rose during South Africa's struggle against apartheid. As a young man, he spent a decade in jail, in the infamous Robben Island. He fought along with Nelson Mandela and other freedom fighters. So why is Zuma abandoning his party now? The party he fought so hard for. Less cliched as it sounds, Zuma says it is to save the ANC from itself.
I will take time to correct it. And this is to let two things.
Is that the only reason? Or is Zuma trying to pile pressure on the ANC to extract revenge from President Ramaphosa? You see, the two men share a long history. The story goes back to 1991. That's when Ramaphosa and Zuma first went head to head. Both stood for the post of ANC Secretary General. Ramaphosa won, and Zuma had to settle for the post of Deputy Secretary General. This was in 1991. And since then, Zuma took the lead politically. He rose to the ranks. In 2009, he also became President of South Africa. Zuma ruled the country for almost 9 years. In 2018, he was forced to step down. There were allegations of corruption. So his rival within the party, Ramaphosa, took over. Now Zuma is under legal scrutiny, although he's no stranger to controversy. He's been linked to corruption scandals for years, including the country's most famous or infamous scandal, the 1999 South African arms deal. Jacob Zuma is said to have benefited from it, with inflated prices and opaque procurements. You know, the typical defense scandal. He was embroiled in one. Zuma has been indicted in this case multiple times, but the proceedings have been dropped or delayed for various reasons. Technically, he's still being questioned. So 24 years after the arms deal, he's not been convicted. He says the case is politically motivated and that these are ploys by his enemies like Ramaphosa to keep him out of politics. But the arms deal is not the only stain on Zuma's record. There are also his infamous ties with the Gupta brothers.
There were lots of things that struck, but one of the things that concerned me very much was how the former president of the Republic, Mr. Jacob Zuma, was prepared to do certain things, wrong things, at the instance of for the Guptas.
Talk about the Gupta family of industrialists. They went to South Africa in 1993 and they were all close to Jacob Zuma. So much so that they're accused of undue influence in South Africa. Critics say the Guptas effectively captured the state, and this is what precipitated Zuma's downfall. Now he says he will not support his party. Ramaphosa has a tough election ahead. The opposition parties have forged a coalition, so the ANC may actually have a fight on its hands this time. But is Jacob Zuma in a position to influence voters? Apparently he is. The former president is still popular. He can still influence a sizable number of votes, maybe even enough to tip the election away from the ANC. The question is, can Ramaphosa prevent that?
Het is pas echt kerst met de decemberzegels van PostNL.
Or will Zuma have the last laugh? The election is still a few months away and it promises to be an interesting one. Today is International Migrants Day. In 1990, the United Nations decided to honor migrants. Every 18th of December, a UN-related agency oversees the celebrations, but there is not really very much to celebrate. Everywhere you look, migrants are seen as a problem, not a cause for celebration. Tonight we'll focus on Europe. Most European countries profess liberal democratic values and human rights, but in practice, they're scrambling in the opposite direction, trying to get rid of immigrants. The UK has its controversial Rwanda deportation plan, which has inspired Germany to do the same. While Italy has struck a deal with Albania to outsource immigrants, and their Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni is going viral. An old video of hers. She says Islam is not compatible with Europe.
I'm seeing this year in terms of irregular migration is record historic levels being superseded. For instance, in the Americas, half a million people have crossed through the Darien Gap in Colombia. We've seen highest number of deaths, for example, in recent migrants in the Mediterranean.
That bleak assessment was delivered by an official from the International Organization for Migration, the UN-related agency in charge of celebrating International Migrants' Day. That's today. December 18th is supposed to be a day to celebrate the contribution of migrants to society. But increasingly, we hear alarm bells ringing when it comes to migration, specifically unregulated or illegal migration.
This year, already more than 36,000 irregular arrivals by sea to the Canary Islands. Out of those, more than 4,000, maybe 4,500 unaccompanied minors. This is a true challenge for these beautiful islands to deal with such a huge arrival that we have seen this year.
That's a sobering example of the problem that Europe is facing. Every year, hundreds of thousands try and migrate to Europe. Some do this to escape persecution back home. Others do it to try and make a better life for themselves. Thousands take to the Mediterranean Sea on ramshackle boats. Many lose their lives in the process. Whatever their reason, the migrants are entering Europe in an unregulated manner, and the continent is overwhelmed. UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak believes there's something even more dangerous afoot.
Criminal gangs will find ever cheaper ways to ply their evil trade. They will exploit our humanity, and they think nothing of putting people's lives at risk when they put them in these boats at sea. And our enemies will also see that we are unable to deal with this, and then they will so increasingly use migration as a weapon, deliberately driving people to our shores to try to destabilize our